Good afternoon and welcome to the Daily Maverick webinar. My name is Greg Nicolson and I'm joined today by Herman Mashaba, well-known businessman, founder of the People's Dialogue more recently, and he's very well known as the former mayor of Johannesburg, where he served for about 3 years until late October last year. Today we'll be discussing Michael Beaumont's new book, The Accidental Mayor, Herman Mashaba and the Battle for Johannesburg. You can see it here. And so Michael Beaumont has worked with Mashaba before. He was the DA campaign manager for the 2016 elections. He was the chief of staff in Mashaba's office in the city of Johannesburg, and he's the CEO of the People's Dialogue, Mashaba's current movement. Thanks for joining us, Herman.
Thank you very much, Greg. What a great opportunity. I don't know if, Greg, you're aware, you're the first journalist who did an in-depth interview with me when I accepted to be the mayoral candidate at Sentence On. You're the first one who did an in-depth interview with me. I remember that interview quite well. And
a lot has changed since then.
A lot has changed, and you can imagine at that time, you remember, I had no clue what's happening in government. I was just determined to unseat the ANC and save my country.
So let's get into it. First of all, I'd like to thank our sponsor for this event, Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. And for everyone watching, welcome. Please post your questions and comments, and I'll try to get to some of them. I'm going to ask some questions, and then I'll try to get to some of your questions and intersperse them as well. But Herman, let's start with one of the scenes I found very interesting in Michael's book was, I think in around October 2019, when after James Self had stepped down following DA's, I guess, dismal performance in the 2019 elections, the DA was electing a new chair of the Federal Council. And you and Michael were flying, I'm not sure where from, but you were flying to Johannesburg. And you told him, you said, if Helen Zilles, who was one of the candidates for chairperson, if she is elected, I'm going to step down. Can you just take us, step down as mayor of Johannesburg? Can you just take us back to that scene when you told Michael that and explain why you decided to resign if Zilles was elected?
Look, what happened about a week or so earlier, it came to my attention that there was a cabal working with the IRR to remove Musi and collapse all the coalition arrangements that DA had, the Johannesburg, Tshwane, and so forth. Obviously, Nelson Mandela Bay was already gone. And when I learned about this, I brought it to Musi's attention immediately. I said, Musi, there is a plan out there, clandestine plan to remove you and collapse our government. And please, we want your intervention. Otherwise, I don't think, for me, being the mayor is the last thing in the world I want. If DA decides that they don't want these arrangements, I think they don't have to really have meetings in the dark and in a clandestine fashion. Let them come out openly, because, Greg, ever since we took over the administration, literally from day one, DA was a very difficult, arrogant partner. And at every pardon?
It was your party.
A difficult partner, out of arrogance of being a DA government and expecting change overnight. When I took over government with ANC budget, with ANC patronage network in terms of administration. You remember when I took over, the city manager was Trevor Fowler, a senior member of the ANC. All the Section 56 senior management of all the departments, all senior ANC people. But DA expected me to perform miracles, and at the same time, not comfortable with me engaging other parties, particularly the EFF. But I said to myself, how do you expect me to really run government without consulting other parties? We're not a DA administration. We're a DA-led administration. You can, and I challenge anyone, you can ask the Freedom Front Plus. They're the ones who brought this to my attention. At the time, I was not even aware that DA had a formal written agreement with other parties when Freedom Front Plus and other parties one day asked us, he says, but guys, what the hell is going on? why are you projecting this government as a DA arrangement? We've got a written agreement. This is where is it? And they produced an agreement, and then 2 days or so later. These all things were not really brought to my attention because I was not part of the negotiations with DA to be in a multi-party government. They did not, in fact, take me through with them. Remember when the EFF actually did not really want me? Immediately when, in fact, it's the media that brought it to my attention that EFF has got problems with me, not DA. DA was going to have the meeting later that afternoon. And I felt disappointed when the media phoned me to tell me, no, EFF said they've just had an press conference in Alexander. Did you see it? And I said, yes, I was watching it. I believe they are happy to give DA the support, but there's a small matter that needs to be attended, but I don't know what it is. And the media said, it's you. I said, please tell DA, because I see they're going to have a press conference here in Sandton in an hour or two. Please ask them not to reject this EFF proposal, because for me, being the mayor is the last job in the world I want. What I got into this job was to unseat the ANC, because for as long as we've got ANC in government, this country is going to collapse. And here we are. There's not coronavirus that has put this country in an ICU. It is because of 26 years of mismanagement, of looting. And very strange enough, now with the support of the DA.
It's very interesting, and we'll get to that in a second. What Herman's referring to is the EFF, I think as many people know, in the negotiations after the 2016 elections, when the DA needed the EFF support to form a government, the EFF actually said, because of Herman's former role as the chairperson of Free Market Foundation, he's an admitted capitalist crusader, former businessman, they said they don't want him. And then, as we'll get to soon, he became what some people called an EFF mayor, and the EFF regretted and sort of thanked him for his service when he resigned. But one of the interesting things about the DA and your administration in Johannesburg, I found two figures for me stood out from the book. One was, I think, first of all, that according to you, you're saying that the DA didn't even send you the actual coalition agreement it had with other parties such as the Freedom Front Plus, the ACDP, the UDM, and so on and so on. Another one was that in 2019, you did an internal poll with your own DA caucus in Johannesburg, and I think you said 43% of DA councillors didn't want to be in that coalition in Johannesburg and wanted to step away. But one of the points I want to touch on quickly is that in his book, Beaumont multiple times mentions that the DA, you found that the DA had sort of an institutionalized way of doing things, and that it was also latently racist. Can you just unpack what you mean by that?
Well, the thing is, what I found, and I brought, fortunate enough, Greg, you can ask anyone who sits on the DA, FedEx, and Federal Council. There is not a single meeting I attended, never raised this whole issue of unnecessary pressure that they were putting against our administration, for them being against our pro-poor policies. To inform them that, guys, we've inherited a city with 170 billion rents infrastructure backlog, 200 informal settlements, where more than 50% of these informal settlements, people don't have toilets. DA would not really support such steps. Fortunate enough, I was not accountable to the DA. I would do it. And you know what? Every time we deliver toilets or we go and deliver, we electrify this project, the DA would not really be there. EFF would be there to acknowledge. That's why I ended up EFF calling me their mayor, and DA then taking offense to this. And DA would be the first people that are informed, because I used to have more meetings as a DA leader, a caucus leader, than anybody else. Michael was there to play that role on informing the party. And I took real serious offense on more than one occasion, asking Federal Council, asking FedEx to say, please, can you please help me, because I'm being deeply hurt by some of DA councillors who are claiming that I'm spending their residents' money in people who are not the voters, who are not voting for the DA, who are not taxpayers. And I said, do you guys realize the statement like this? I said, you know what? Unfortunately, I don't have the powers to fire such people, because I said, if it was me, I would get rid of a person like that, because for me, this is racist. People are not living in these informal settlements because they want to live there. They live in these informal settlements because the ANC has allowed it, and it's an opportunity for us as a DA to demonstrate to those black voters that us as a DA, we care. They said no. Up to today, the DA never supported. That's why I ended up being called an EFF mayor. You know, Greg, just to share this with people of South Africa and the world. You know, from day one, I used to say to DA councillors when I'm with them, when they will moan about their lights or cutting grass in their areas. So I said to them, but guys, let's look at the support that we're getting from the EFF to be able to pass reports that allows us to govern. Passing budgets, we've never failed to pass budget like what the ANC. The first time around, they failed to pass their adjustment budget. They failed to pass their budget. We'll see tomorrow. I've just been reliably told that DA has given instructions for DA to support them. So I was saying to my DA councillors when they were complaining that their residents are saying we're not cutting grass and so forth, like is happening in Cape Town. I would say to them, but tell me, guys, between you as a DA councillor and an EFF councillor, we've got budget to pass or an important report that we need council approval. I said, tell me, between the two, who's got the most difficult job to do to sell to their residents? You can imagine an EFF guy who represent the audience or the voters who don't have a toilet, but is prepared to support the government that does not care about him. And you are telling me about your resident because obviously we don't have the budget to cut the grass. Who's got the most difficult job? Honestly, one does not really have to really be a rocket scientist to figure out that the one where you can imagine you're a ward councillor, you represent a community, but you're part of that government, you are supporting that government that's failing to provide you with toilets.
The DA has long had issues with its identity, I guess. As it's tried to grow, there have been certain challenges as to which sort of version of liberalism it wants to embrace. And it's well known there has been a large debate within the party about whether policies on historical redress should be linked to race. And we do know as well, even when Mmusi Maimane was elected, I think in 2015 as leader of the DA, there were still different factions, as there always are in political parties, jockeying for position. Do you think you were naive when you joined the DA and stood for mayor of Johannesburg?
I think, Greg, it is because one did not really have an alternative. I think, fortunately enough, my statement when I joined the DA is there. And I made it really very clear. In fact, I remember even doing a 3 minutes video, which I paid for myself to promote DA. And I'm saying that in my communication, that DA is not perfect. But if I look at all the political parties, they're a better devil. So yes, and I really believed Helen Zilles. I really thought that when DA talks about One South Africa for all and correcting the injustice of the past, I really believed them. Until obviously I was there now, practically in there, and we had an opportunity to deal with the injustice of the past, but some of the DA people totally refused. That's why they ended up clandestinely trying to really dissolve these arrangements, because what I was trying to do was an embarrassment to them. Do I regret it? I don't really regret it. It's opened my eyes, because if so, I would still be voting for the DA. I would still be defending them, because I wouldn't really know, because there was no one to really come out clearly what the problem was with the DA. You remember when Lindy left, I remember going to the States to convince her to be the mayoral candidate for the DA. That's how far I believed in the DA. And I could not get clearly the reasons why she left the DA. It was obviously the media speculating. But for me, I've had 3 years of the governing under the DA, and I can confirm that the current DA leadership, for me, that on the right of the Freedom Front Plus.
One of the, I guess, glowing characters or sort of stories in your book is the EFF. Beaumont describes them as reliable, dependable, upfront. He says in all the negotiations with them, they did what they say they'll do. Whereas on the other hand, you sort of describe the DA as sort of maneuvering behind the background, in the background, and not really always being upfront, open and honest and supporting you. How did you keep the EFF on board? And can you respond to claims that you sacrificed some of the DA's values? And I think it links in here to, we have a question here from Charles Fairweather, who said, can one sustain a coalition where the underlying principles of the parties are completely incompatible?
Well, I think let me start first by addressing this particular question. I think that's something that South Africans miss to see. There's a huge difference between local government and national government, because at local government level, we don't deal with policies. Will I get into a coalition arrangement with the EFF at national government? There's no chance. If you look at the core values of what we stand for as the People's Dialogue, we stand for non-racialism. We stand unapologetically for free market. We stand for social justice. We stand for the rule of law. You get involved in corruption, there must be consequences. We stand for electoral reform. Now, if you look at in terms of free market economy and non-racialism, those two issues, there's no way that you can ever agree with the EFF. So will I get into a coalition arrangement with the EFF at national level? I guess it's almost impossible. But local government level, Greg, it's about ensuring that there's reliable water, there's refuse to be collected, like right now in my complex. Normally, pick it up, collect rubble on Friday afternoon. What is today? It's Wednesday. Our rubble is still sitting outside. Today it's on Wednesday. That's what local government is all about. Local government is about the people of Soweto, people of Zandspruit. When they don't have toilets, we make sure that we give them toilets. We electrify. Kliptown, you remember Kliptown in 1954 when the ANC passed out the Freedom Charter. It took to me and my coalition government to electrify Kliptown. We are about to making sure that the roads are working, electrical substations are working. When I took over, I immediately did a study of our infrastructure backlog. 170 billion rands. I had a press conference on that. Anyone who wants that document to see the infrastructure backlog of the city of Joburg, because when ANC took over, their focus was on changing names of streets and any building they could see and stealing. So it was so easy to really agree that when we identify a community with massive issues, I'd like to use toilets because it's something that is really, for me, painful that we can expect human beings to live without toilets. I had that personal experience during the election, the campaign in Alexander, where one day I came into one community. I saw one wonderful lady, and I could see this lady must have been employed. And I asked her, obviously, give her a background. And I said, but tell me, how do you live in a place like this without toilet? And she said to me, Mr. Mashaba, I've actually trained my body to go to toilet when I'm at work. This is during the campaign. This is the reality. This is not, it's not a movie. I remember raising this matter in one of my State of the City address, and ANC councillors laughed about this. I was relating to them what government is all about, more especially local government. So local government, that is why I could work with the Freedom Front Plus. As the Freedom Front Plus, because Freedom Front Plus was, we gave them a position to be the chairman of economic development. Ask Franco Di Lange from the Freedom Front Plus in their committee who was the most difficult partner. Every time after their meeting, would always come to my office, says, but Herman, what the hell is going on? Why is DA not interested in addressing inequality and so forth? He says they're making life so easy for the ANC because openly they are critical of your approach in addressing poor areas. And he says, you've got our support. Unfortunately, I'm only one. And I'm being embarrassed all the time. And requests come to my office and says, can you talk to your colleagues?
What about
if they've got issues, then let's discuss it on the side, but not really be critical of the budget that they passed. They all complain about it in council. Sorry, in meetings with the ANC.
But back to sort of my earlier questions, and one of the criticisms of you in your Johannesburg government was, or at least, and Helen Zilles recently wrote this about you, saying that you misunderstood coalition politics and in fact sacrificed too much of the DA's values to be able to work with the EFF.
Well, I think you look at what has really happened in Cape Town, and I used to probably in a naive fashion defend DA when the people in the townships in Cape Town would complain about not getting services, and I thought it was a budgetary constraints and on consideration, but I'm very, very clear that it is the political will. So if Helen talks about coalition, and coalition does not respect all the parties that votes with you, because you can understand ANC from day one wanted to collapse my government, and they did not obviously apologize about it. They made it really very clear. That is why every second day there were every council meeting, I know there will be a protest. After every council meeting, when we pass the resolutions, official resolutions, pass them in council, the following day they'll be going to the public protector to go and report me for all sorts of manner of things. So I think I succeeded to keep my coalition arrangement in place because I respected all the parties that were voting with me. I did not say because DA has got 38%, EFF 20, or EF Freedom Front Plus, and others have got one each. All of them, I treated them as equals. I was not prepared to allow DA to dominate because DA wanted to have the arrogance that they are the majority party. I said, I'm not here to represent political parties. I am here to represent the residents of the city of Johannesburg, if not really South Africa. If that's you don't want me, at every federal council meeting, you can ask them, every council FedEx meeting that I attended for the 3 years, every time I would ask them, I said, guys, with all this groaning and dissatisfaction, please tell me, if you are not happy with this arrangement, let's dissolve it. We don't have to really work behind the scenes and to sabotage my administration as the DA. I said, please tell me. And they will assure me, they says, no, everything is fine. We'll continue. We're still happy. Ask them. Fortunately enough, these are things that I've never discussed behind closed doors. I don't really operate like that. I'd raised these issues with them from day one in every FedEx and Federal Council meeting.
Now, we've got a question here from Nyameko Mogongo, who asks, Mr. Mashaba, was every municipal procurement contract under your watch in the city corruption-free? And if so, what is this noise about the AfriRent fleet contract? And so for the viewers who probably know a little bit about the AfriRent contract, it was a car fleet contract that the city of Johannesburg entered into an agreement to. There was a tender out, but the tender protest stalled, and the city of Joburg eventually signed this agreement with the AfriRent company for over R1 billion, but it piggybacked on a deal that they had with that the company had with Mohali City, the government there. And there's been controversy that AfriRent had business dealings with Mahuna Investments, and as I think that's probably going to ring bells for many people, because as we now know, Mahuna is owned by Julius Malema's cousin, and it's been raised in some of the discussions around VBS. So what was happening there? And also the Treasury has recently said that they're investigating the matter, and they said that there was no reason why this shouldn't be re-advertised and gone through the proper tender processes.
Well, very good question, and I think Michael does touch on the subject matter in the book. You know, Greg, what is actually quite hateful about sometimes politics being a dirty game, and totally unnecessarily being a dirty game. When this matter was brought to my attention on the day of council, and I think you can see some of the journalists working with the ANC. If you look at all the matters of corruption being brought against me, were always brought on the morning of council. Then I'm told about that I solicited the support of the EFF for my budget, but that time the budget was already long past. Firstly, secondly, AfriRent. I did not know personally that there was a company called AfriRent in my life, and I challenged the journalist who wrote this, or anybody. I said, guys, let's go in front of the senior judge in this country, even if it is the Chief Justice. We can confirm this. I did not know there's a company called AfriRent. In the 3 years that I've worked with the EFF has never discussed the tenders with me. EFF has never come to me asking me about tender or negotiate a tender with me. My negotiations with EFF were reports going to council. So this whole issue about that I gave EFF the AfriRent, also what's important for people to know. I did not even know at the time that the city had a contract that was going to expire, because you remember we took an existing government with existing contracts. When that contract was going to expire, is the city manager supposed to bring this to my attention, because it's something outside my way. So I did not even know that there was supposed to be a tender for fleet replacement. I did not, EFF never discussed a tender with me. I did not know of a company called AfriRent until it was brought to my attention. And I immediately asked the city manager through Group Forensic under Sibia to do a forensic investigation. And part of the investigation that Sibia did came with the commissioner of oath for me to give a statement about the issues that I'm talking about. And a few months later, Sibia and the city manager gave the report, which I made public. Absolutely, findings were found against some of the officials, because through the tender process of this nature, so many people that are involved. Then you can imagine, these are ANC people we found in the system. The two of them resigned when they were supposed to go for disciplinary hearing. Severe, some of them laid criminal charges with the works and the NPA.
So, you're talking about General Shadrach Sabir, who was a former Gauteng Hawks head, who then head up the city's investigations unit, anti-corruption investigations unit, which you established. Sorry.
That's right, yes. So what I'm saying is, right now, a few weeks ago, a month ago, when I had National Treasury, for the first time in the history of the city of Johannesburg, National Treasury wanting to have an inquiry. But I said, but the official investigation was done. It is there. They don't have to spend any more money. And criminal charges were laid against people who were involved, and there was no political involvement by me or any of the political office to influence the tender to go to any particular organization, because I did not even really know about the company called AfriRent. Even up to today, I have no interest to know who the owners of AfriRent is, because it's totally irrelevant to me, because none of the EFF people have ever in the 3 years discussed any tender with me.
So back to Nyameko's question, are you confident that all of the tenders, all of the procurement processes under the city of Johannesburg under your term were free of corruption?
No, that is why, Greg, do you remember audit-led corruption, public enemy number one? If you look at, by the time I left, we had over 6,000 cases to the value of what, just over 34 billion rand. Why these cases are not really pursued, it's beyond me, because some of the cases, please feel free to ask General Sibia and his team as to why, or ask Advocate Batoyi as to why people are not really being charged. So the corruption in the city, so one thing I want people to understand, Johannesburg, actually, the city of Johannesburg was at the epicenter of the state capture in the country, more especially by the Guptas. So the level of corruption in the city of Johannesburg was completely made. That's why within few months of taking over, I realized I'm sitting really here with a massive task. And I decided, let me form a unit. You remember that unit by CBBL was actually established by me. First time in municipal election, in a municipal authority, where I felt, you know what, all these cases being brought to my attention, and I must give them to the ANC people to investigate themselves. Let me get an independent person, not directly responsible to me, reporting directly to the city manager and our group forensic, so that these cases are dealt as free as possible. But unfortunately, the city of Johannesburg does not have the prosecutorial authority. I'm sure no South African can tell me that they've not heard me many times requesting Parliament to consider giving powers to big metros like Johannesburg so that we can pursue these cases ourselves. Ask Advocate Batoyi, ask the president of the country how many of these cases that I've given to him that General Sibia and Jeffries had already completed. But unfortunately, the city does not have the authority to prosecute.
Now, I think another, just to explain to some of the viewers, I think when you talk about the Gupta's involvement in the city of Johannesburg corruption before your term, I assume you're referring to regiments, the Gupta Link company that was linked to paying millions to Jeff Makubo, who's the current mayor and ANC chairperson in Johannesburg, which the case against him fell apart.
Why did it fall apart? That case can't fall apart because there's enough evidence.
So, but on another point related to criticism of your administration, the public protector recently leaked, or somebody recently leaked an interim public protector report, which found that in your administration, there are multiple irregular appointments, including the JMPD head, I think, David Dembe, if I'm not wrong. There was questionable funding, I think, of an NGO that you've long been part of, and it found that you solicited free services from one of the business partners of your wife, Connie. Can you just respond to that briefly? I know you want to take the matter to court, but can you respond to that, please?
Well, I think, Greg, this is laughable, firstly, but secondly, annoying in the sense that we can have the public protector getting involved in political matters. When a Section 56 manager is appointed, it goes through a process. You advertise. You have a committee that must do the interview, then bring a preferred candidate to my attention, and then I take that report to council for council approval. So does it really mean that if ANC is against the recommendation of what we've done and they vote against it, it is against the law? These are appointments voted by council, not Herman Mashaba and people in the dark corners. And one thing that you must understand, that when we run and take over from ANC, you must understand you're going to take over from very strong patronage, because ANC senior appointments are not based on what people know. They are based on who people know. So when you take over any government from the ANC, that's one thing you must understand. You are taking over a patronage network. So you've got to guard against this. So you are not going to continue having a senior ANC person in senior position who's going to sabotage you. I made it clear. I remember the second week of taking over, I had a 4-day session with all the senior managers through the city manager, Trevor Fowler, and spent 4 days with them for them to really understand the new administration that's taken over government, and to say, guys, I'm aware you've worked for the same political party for all these years. Please, you decide. You want to serve the residents of the city of Johannesburg or to serve political parties. Those who want to serve political parties, I think I'd advise you to leave before we act against you. And those who want to stay, we are there to support you. That is why I said, let us commit. We are going to do a skills audit to ensure that those people who are all holding senior positions, they're holding those positions because they know what they're doing. Obviously, if ANC believes that we must appoint the people, and council votes against it, and then the public protector takes this to be irregular, well, let the public protector make the determination. And I've made it clear, obviously she claims this to be a draft report, that fortunate enough we've got the courts in this country that are still relatively free, that if obviously her reports comes out, a final one comes out as like that draft, I'm happy to take it for review. And one thing I want the public protector to know, because this whole exercise, like right now, is costing me a fortune to use the lawyers, because I'm not really working for the city. One thing for sure, if when I take it for review, she loses the case. I want every cent that I've spent on the lawyers, and she must also be responsible for the public protector's office lawyers, because those lawyers in the public protectors, I've paid for this. I'm one of the big taxpayers in this country, and I've been for many years, because we cannot as South Africans allow such an office to really play in the political space.
One of the interesting sort of takeaways that I took from your book, from yours and Michael's book, I guess the sort of collaboration, is that you came into office promising change, and as an opposition party, everybody expected change quite quickly. But in government, you soon realized how difficult it is, how complex it is, how you have to work within sometimes quite detailed and onerous laws within a system that's already set up. Can you just tell us a little bit about what you learned about how difficult it actually is to affect change and get your policies enacted in government, when you said not only were the existing employees that you inherited from the previous administration sometimes working against you, it's just actually so difficult to get things going because government sort of, the cogs of government grind actually very slowly.
Well, it becomes even more difficult when you have your own political party not giving you their support. I mean, ANC, I knew that they will work against me. One thing you must understand, Greg, when I took over in August of 2016, ANC had just passed their budget end of June of that same year. So I had to run with that budget, ANC budget, until June of 2017. Now, you can't change that. Unfortunately, government doesn't really work without budget, and you've got to follow that budget process. And you can imagine the ANC budget, which right now, the current budget that they're going to be discussing tomorrow, their focus is not about infrastructure spend. And if you look at the last budget that I presented, that they ran with until the end of the June of this year, that budget managed, when I took over, the infrastructure spend at the time was sitting at 58%. I managed to move infrastructure from 58 to 71, despite all the challenges. It's not easy because local government, it's a highly regulated kind of environment. Someone steals, and we caught so many of them stealing, more especially senior people. To get rid of them, the process, it's mind-boggling. Over and above our draconian labor laws, you still have Municipal Systems Act and the Structural Act, where a senior manager does something illegal. So I've got to call a special council meeting to inform council. And all the time ANC will support this. all the parties, including the EFF. That's why I'm saying as the EFF, as much as, I mean, they've got their own faults, but for us as the city of Johannesburg, we can confidently tell you they support not once. If you look at how many senior people are fired, and I'm not really proud about it, but it was necessary to fire this. And I had to take this to council in a closed council meeting. EFF, not a single time where I had evidence, because I did not fire people on the basis of emotions. I fired people on the basis of hard evidence. Some of these people, I don't understand why they're still out there, that the Walks and the NPR are not really charging them. But we were making inroads, giving out the title deeds to our people, raising the money to rebuild the inner city that has been taken over by criminal elements, working with the private sector. Informal settlements, which we're going to transform into proper living areas for our people, coming out with site and services where people don't have to really build on top of one another. We would, as a city, we're committed to ensure that we can subdivide, provide electricity, sewer, and everything, so that when you build whatever you're building, but at least there's basic infrastructure. ANC is cancelling all that. We gave 8,000 of security personnel and the cleaners, give them dignity. Some of them, their salaries more than doubled. The exploitation by the ANC and COSATU, we brought it to an end. We extended the clinic hours. By the time I left the city, 26, 27 clinics already operating at extended hours, where people could go to clinics on Saturday after hours and so forth. This is just to really give you an idea of
the book definitely goes into a lot of those details. I want to get quickly to a couple of questions from the viewers at the moment. Let me go to one from Nyameko Magongo. How do I give hope to my 11-year-old daughter that things in the city of Johannesburg and the country will get better? Why a part of the fortunate few with education, wherewithal, etc., should we continue to stay in South Africa? Where are you drawing hope from at the moment?
Well, Greg, if we need to really be pragmatic as human beings. I mean, the biggest enemy, the biggest problem of South Africa is ANC. For as long as the people of this country are not going to democratically remove ANC in power, then they must accept the consequences. This country will collapse like how Zimbabwe collapsed. And people must not really blame anybody else, but then blame ourselves, the 58 million South Africans. We've got 19 million South Africans who did not vote last time as compared to the 17 million. So we need to get people to go out and vote ANC out. And the beauty about it is that ANC is losing support at 2.5 million to 3 million votes for the last 3 elections. They lose 2.5 to 3 million votes. And come 2021, we know they're going to lose another 2-3 million voters. So I think the power is in the hands of South Africans to go out and vote. And I think, honestly, for me, I don't really accept the way people say they don't have an alternative. You can vote for us, and if you don't want to vote for us, look for someone else. But to say that you don't have an alternative, honestly, it is unfair, because we're not going to solve this country's problem at dinner tables or being armchair critics. All of us have got a responsibility. That's why I left my career as a businessman, a capitalist for that matter, to say, look, you know what, if I'm not going to be the one solving South Africa's problem, who else? So we're going to be another alternative. So we expect South Africans come out in numbers. Let's democratically remove the ANC, because ANC will do everything possible to stay in power. But with the determination of South Africans, we can remove them, and remove them in a peaceful kind of fashion.
And I assume you're hoping to do that with your new political party. So you launched the People's Dialogue, I think it was in December 2019. And from there, you've been engaging different people from different sectors, talking about establishing your policies, looking at how you're going to go forward. But here's a question I think that's very relevant from Zodwa Ndlovu. She asks, Is another political party the answer to South Africa's problems? And how will your party, well, you can tell us the name if you want to launch it here, let us know the name. How will it be different to the ones that are already in the system?
Well, okay, first of all, we can't change this country by going to ask the Russians to give us AK-47s. We are not going to change this country by banning our clinics and our schools. The only way we can change this country fortunes, it's us deciding the type of political leadership that we want. So if anybody thinking that you can change this country without being involved in politics, I don't know how you will change it, because you change the country by ensuring that you have ethical leadership, servant leadership, and if they don't deliver what you expect, the next time you vote them out. Until such time the South Africans can take the responsibility, not be there all the time voting politicians. Look at yourself in the mirror. Have I voted right? Have I spoken to my family? Have I spoken to my colleagues to ensure that they understand that democracies, successful nations succeed because civil society holds government accountable, and that's something that people must understand. We can't change it any other way. So having another political party that is going to unseat the ANC, because we are committed to unseat the ANC. That's our priority. But we've got our core 5 values. We've got our 5 core values that are not negotiable. We are committed to non-racial South Africa. We are not. If you are looking for a racial party, go somewhere else. There are lots of political parties that are for races. We are not for that. We are going to promote non-racialism. We are the party that government is going to play less role in the economy. We want particularly SMMEs to be the ones driving the economy. What we do, we create an enabling environment for the private sector to employ our people, create economic activity. We are for social justice. We are the most unequal society in the world. We want to ensure that within the next 15 to 20 years down the line, South Africa has got more middle class than the current situation that we see, where we've got very few rich people, and very few, people, majority of the people are poor. So we have to close that gap. And the only way we can close that gap is by economic activities, by wealth creation. It's not going to happen because we go to church and we've got priests giving us grass and so forth. We have to get economic activity and the right type of economic activity. Also, what is important is the rule of law. Because you can't have an economy that is going to grow when you have politicians stealing money, where the level of crime is so high that the international community, South Africa from a tourism point of view, it's actually one of the greatest countries because of our weather throughout the year. 24 months, 12 months in a year, our weather, it's one of the best in the world. So, but at the moment, people are too scared to come to South Africa because we are known to really be a very violent society. So we need the rule of law that anyone who steals public monies, whether you're a politician or a businessman or a priest, you must be put behind the bars and so forth. And also, what's important, let us ensure that we look after and into our electoral reform, where our public bearers, office bearers, are elected directly by the people. And we are going to do this. You will see it, Greg. For us, when we compete next year, before we go into the main election themselves, every ward in all the municipalities that we're going to contest, our public reps are not going to be decided by me or some of us behind closed doors. Every ward will have its own primaries. People in that community, because they know the people in the community, because we don't want to end up with people with criminal activity, people who are not committed to public service, saving in our political party. So, and that's something that we're going to do. Fortunately enough, we don't have to wait for the ANC to change, to have electoral reform, because ANC will use every available opportunity to delay this process, because they want to elect their people behind closed doors. What we are saying as a political party, we are committing that anyone who's going to represent you in any community is going to be elected by the people to represent our party. But you, the people out there, you are going to be the final arbiters in this matter to decide who is your ward councillor, including now when you go to national government. MPs, you will know who is going to be the MP before the main government elections actually take place.
I think I'm very interested to see how that's going to work, this sort of constituency-based system in choosing your list of candidates. But we have a few questions here on the specifics. Raj Pentia is asking, is Musi Maimane on board with your plans? And there's also been a couple of questions asking where you'll be contesting. I know you've mentioned Johannesburg, eKurhuleni, Tshwane, but will you be going into other municipalities across the country in these 2021 elections?
Well, the first one, I'm afraid Musi is not part of our new political formation. That I can confirm, but obviously at any point in time, if he's available to join us, like any other public rep, we will subject any public rep to public scrutiny than us, because our public reps are not elected by us. So we welcome anyone, including you, Greg. If you are interested to really be a public rep, we will subject you to the same scrutiny and intelligence like we do with everybody else. In terms of the municipalities, personally, and I'm really asking our people with total humility, you've got to be strategic in life. For us to make a mistake of thinking that we can contest all the 278 municipalities next year would be the biggest mistake I'm not prepared to make. So I can confirm with South Africans that our party, when we launch in August, we are not going to contest all the municipalities. We are going to focus on municipalities that are winnable. So right now, I can confirm without any shade of doubt that we've identified Johannesburg, Tshwane, and eKurhuleni. Those ones are already confirmed. The others, we said to our people on the ground, let's engage. Let us see if we can find ethical leaders, because we don't want to end up with having the mayoral candidates with checkered backgrounds. So if we can find the right leadership and those municipalities are winnable and we get the resources, we will consider. We still have time. So right now, I can confirm to people of South Africa that the ones that we've already identified are these three. Others, however, we will consider them on the basis of the issues that I've raised. But one thing I can tell you, we are not going to contest all of them. It is not possible, and I don't think, and I know the South Africans in other small municipalities are concerned about this, but it is not humanly possible that we can put structures in place to really be able to really contest effectively, because we are not contesting to be an opposition. We are contesting to win. So we will only participate in municipalities which are winnable. And Johannesburg, Tshwane, and eKurhuleni, these ones are highly winnable.
On Johannesburg, we've got a question from Temba Nkubinde. He asks, if voted back into power, what would be your top 3 priorities for the city of Johannesburg? But because of time, let's just keep it. What would be your number 1 priority if you manage to become mayor again of Johannesburg?
I think, running government or running business is not an academic exercise. You can't just really come out with one thing. You've got to do so many things, but run them simultaneously. So so I don't think you need to really play with weights. There's so many things that you've got to do. One thing that we commit are those core 5 values that I've committed to. We have to ensure that as soon as we take over power, we ensure that with immediate effect, we professionalize the system. We get rid of all the patronage network. The first time around, I know I wasted time because I did not understand the system. So this time, all those who are not there to serve society, we've got to get rid of them. We've got to ensure that obviously we come out with a budget that is going to address the challenges of the city of Johannesburg. We need to get Johannesburg to be a business-friendly environment. We need businesses to come and set up in Joburg, come out with incentives so that they can create employment opportunities for our people, create economic opportunity. So You can't just say, I will do one. So, and we'll fight corruption. We will declare corruption as a public enemy number one. Look, unfortunately, with our criminal justice system captured by the ANC at the moment, we will use the court. We will put as much pressure as possible with our criminal justice system. The city of Johannesburg will be the first one to start actually pursuing the cases privately, so that all those who have stolen public monies ultimately must engage in court.
Which you started to pursue during your term. But we have a question here from Jeremy Wiley. Will you be willing to work with the DA in a coalition and other non-ANC parties, or even the ANC?
One thing I would really want to really make it really very clear. I think there are certain things for me, I don't stand on the fence on them. In the event in any of the municipalities we contest and we don't get outright majority, we are happy to work with everyone else except the ANC. I would not personally would want to be associated with ANC in any form or format, because I don't really take ANC to be a political party. I take ANC to be a criminal enterprise. Therefore, I would, if it means I've got to walk away from that relationship, then give support to the ANC. I will not really give ANC any opportunity to be in government, and I would not want to be associated with the ANC.
Now, Herman, before we go, I'll double this up with one of my questions. So Mzi Kula asks, in regards to the Gauteng metros, what's your plan in dealing with foreigners, I think, is basically the question. And coupled onto that, I'll ask, I know that you've been very clear saying you're not xenophobic and the rule of law must be adhered to when it comes to immigration. But looking back, do you not think that some of your comments, such as, we don't want them bringing our bowlers here, you know, when you made that citizen's arrest of the guy pushing the cowheads in a trolley in the city of Johannesburg, and misrepresenting or perhaps skewing crime figures related to foreigners, do you not think that some of them were irresponsible?
No, absolutely not. I think, Greg, look at unemployment in our country. We are reaching right now over 50% unemployment. By end of this year, we'll end up easily with close to 60% unemployment. And if you look at undocumented foreign nationals coming as far as Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, Nigeria, everywhere. And anyone who would expect me, I must not put South African first. When the constitution of this country, it's so very, very clear around immigration. And I'm afraid I'm not going to apologize to anyone about it. I think South Africa has got to be the country of the rule of law, like all the other countries. You can go to Botswana, you can go to Pakistan tomorrow or Somalia without the passport. In fact, some of these countries, Greg, you'll battle to even get a visa to go and visit there. So South Africa is not going to be a playground of criminal activity. You come to South Africa, you come here legally, and when you are here, you must respect our laws. One thing I promise people of South Africa, come 2024, because we can't do this at local government election. And I'm not apologizing to anyone about this. We'll do it within the constitutional framework. When we take over power in 2024, one of the first unit we will establish is the one to deal with all the citizenships are issued under ANC, because the majority of them were fraudulently issued. We will revoke that, and those people will be punished, be South Africans and so forth, got involved in that, and these people must be sent back to their countries. Those who don't qualify. Those who qualify to be in South Africa, absolutely we will work with them, because South Africa was built at the back of migrants, and we want to continue inviting people of the world to come to South Africa. But we want them to come here legally, and when they're here, they must respect our laws. So one of the things when in Parliament, we will push to ensure that there's a special unit of comprising of Home Affairs, our intelligence unit, and subs and defense, to ensure that we hunt down all the people who are in this country legally.
And I look forward to discussing that and perhaps even debating it with you further. Herman Mashaba, thank you so much for having me. Thanks for everyone who tuned in today. And tune in soon for more Daily Maverick webinars.
Thank you so much for the great opportunity, and thank you so much for talking to you again after more than 4 years of having an intense discussion.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.